So episode 1 to 3 of Invincible has dropped for season 3, which I don't know. Over time, the hype for this show has gone down a bit. I remember when season 2 was coming out, like it was such a big thing. But nonetheless, people are excited for season 3. But I'm here to compare the episodes that have dropped, episode 1 to 3, to the comics, see the things that they changed, the things that they added, and the things that they even added but tweaked a bit, comparing it to the comics. So let's just start off with episode 1. And starting off, they actually did a time skip a bit from the Anshum Levy fight from last season. In the comics, continuing on with the story after that Anshum Levy fight, there was no time skip. Debbie was still healing from her arm. Oliver was still a baby. But it's understandable. It's a show. They want to move things along.
I had to save Rex from like 100 multipoles.
But the real bad guys got away.
Yeah, I promise. But remember, I didn't get my powers until I was way older than you.
Too late! You promised!
And one of the big changes, or should I say tweaks, is the training montage that Mark had in episode 1. All the different variations that he had is totally different from the comics.
138%. Science team is already working on a heavier.
The comics, the only thing that was the same was when he was doing push-ups with that big machinery. That was the only thing that was the same from the comics. The show, they gave him different variations of his training to cover his durability, his strength, and his speed, which I think added more to the story and the character and the impending danger that Cecil is preparing for. One of the training montage is Invincible fighting that giant, building up his strength. But in the comics, he fought a villain named Rampage, but that one was not even part of his training arc. It was just him, doing his world-saving stuff. Now, the show, from the beginning did change some things, pulled some story forward from the comics. So in this season 3, episode 1, it would have been around this time that Robot would have shown his new body to the Guardians of the Globe. In the comics, it was Cecil who brought him out to show to the team. Also, another plot point or story they moved forward from the comics to the show was Sinclair and the Animan. The story was done in season 1, which it was at this point, if they followed the comics, it would have been done in season 3. Also, the fight with the Secrets, which was in season 2, and Amber's breakup would have been done at this point in the show, around episode 1 or 2 of season 3.
Electricity and stuff you're supposed to be good at. Relax. Look, you've got at least 3 minutes until the police show up. Hey, dickheads!
The stuff with Multiple is almost the same as in the comics.
You are because you're all alone.
Shit. Holy shit.
You guys can see her too, right?
Wait!
No, Kate. Paul almost killed Rex. And because of him, those guys got away with the Declaration of Independence.
Now, the scene with Kate showing herself to the Guardians that she's alive was not in the comics, as well as Shrinking Ray showing up healed and having that moment with Rex. Also, the scene with Rick, Mark, and William is something that happens in the comics, but differently. They switched it up. In the comics, this was the moment where William was reliving and still having PTSD over, what happened to him, which the show explored last season with him on the rooftop. But this episode changed it to be this way, more light-hearted and much more healing for William at this point. Now, one of the biggest moments in episode 1 was Dark Seismic's, attack, which in the comics, they actually showed the moments of the superheroes being attacked and abducted all over the US. We even saw Donald in action, which, the show cut and just straight up just showed, some dots on the monitor disappearing and finally showing them abducted underground with Dark Seismic. Another change they made from the show compared to the comics is that now they did make some changes to Mark and Eve, their relationship and their confession and all. In the comics, Eve straight up just went to Mark, I think it was in his dorm room, and straight up just told him that, are we dating or not, since you and Amber are broken up. That is when Mark confesses and then accidentally mentions Eve like he did in the show. But in the comics, Eve gets upset like the show and leaves. So a little time passes, Mark goes to find her, and she's in Africa at this point, and that is where he tries to, make his true feelings known, make amends, and that is when Cecil calls that all the superheroes have been abducted. But in the show, we just one continuous take. That is, Mark confesses and then accidentally mentions Eve's future self, with Eve getting upset, and then they are called to come and deal with the dark seismic situation. And one plot point that the show also removed was that in the comics, prior to this, Mark and Eve had already kissed. Mark was with Amber at this time, and it was at this time that they went to space to fight the Secrets. So even though the fight with the Secrets did happen in season 2, that plot point was completely cut from the show. The fight with Dark Seismic is a little bit different, but the same in sort of the framework of the entire sequence. In the show, there was more focus on the other heroes fighting the monsters, Now in the comics, there was something similar. There was an attack before this underground attack, which the show removed, and that was Dark Seismic actually attacked first, up top, and that is when the other superheroes, like you saw in this episode, came together and fought him, and then he was later arrested and thrown in prison. So it was after this that his underground attack, capturing all the other superheroes, took place. But in the show, it was actually last season's attack on the monument that got him there. Now in the comics, it was not just Mark and Eve who entered, underground to fight Dark Seismic. There was the character Wolfman, who's yet to be introduced. But there were a couple of scenes, in there that were exactly like the comics.
She can get us out of these things!
Eve, wake up!
Eve, please. We're in big trouble.
I don't think so.
Yes.
Now, in the comics, Dark Seismic's motive was a personal one. He had it for Invincible. He had a vendetta against him, unlike the show, which had him have these ideals about humanity and how we are destroying the planet and how Mother Earth needs to be rid of us in order to, for it to thrive. Also, how Mark and Eve are knocked out by Dark Seismic is totally different in the comics.
Goodbye.
You're not supposed to be this tough. You're not supposed to win.
As well as the fact that Donald was part of the people who were kidnapped, underground, plus other heroes who didn't appear in the show, which I think the show is saving some of the reveals for other episodes, like, the big ones coming, the multiversal one. Another change from the comics is that after the fight with Dark Seismic and the whole Darkwing situation, Cecil actually comes underground. He was actually there, unlike the show where he was in Washington, D.C., and Mark had to go there to find him.
Why the hell is he here? And why the fuck are those things here? He's a murderer. And those things, the guy who made those things, killed people. He turned people into monsters. He almost killed William. He should be in prison.
He can't fix his mistakes in prison, Mark. Neither can Darkwing.
Wait!
I can't, Eve. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry about before, too. I messed it all up.
Go home, Mark, before you do something you'll regret.
I told you, I'm not leaving until... Wait, why are we in here again? is working for you?
The White Room is for my protection.
Protection from what?
From you, Mark. From you.
Now, lastly, the post-credit scene that showed Nolan and Alan in prison, with Alan still trying to, convince Omni-Man Nolan to break out with him and join the coalition for that fight. It's all new, in the show. It doesn't happen in the comics. It's just the show's way of showing more of their bonding, just building their friendship up till that escape that eventually happens later on.
Me? And since he always listens to his mom, I'll ask him to start training you so someday you can be a hero just like him. And you know that many superheroes have secret identities. Even your brother. This is your secret identity.
Cool.
As long as there's no more secrets between us. Promise?
I promise, I promise.
We can monitor his superpowers more closely, help him understand and control them.
There's that word again.
You know what I mean.
So that's basically it for, the comparison of episode 1 of season 3 to the comics. Now let's move on to episode 2. And right off, we see the backstory of Cecil, which is a little different in the comics. It's almost the same, but unlike the show focusing solely on Cecil all the way, the comics actually showed Brett, that veteran superhero that helped out with the dark seismic situation. It followed him trying to stop these two nut jobs, and in the comics Cecil was already tied up and just waiting for backup and to be rescued. But I like this change on how the show focuses on Cecil and what he's been through, and how he was just like Mark but had his ideals changed due to the situations he's been in, and found out that the world is not actually in black and white. I like how in the show too, they made Cecil to be a hero, trying to save the town from the gas, sacrificing himself, unlike the comics where he was actually just tied up and needed saving and the gas got him.
How many did we lose?
We would have lost thousands if it wasn't for you.
That answered my question.
17.
Safe room.
Not leaving the party early, are we?
After that, the moments with the Lizard League was almost exactly the same as in the comics. The only difference is that he shot them in the head, plus the then Guardians of the Globe also showed up in that scene. Now in the comics, it was just months after he was put into prison that his superior came to get him out, but in the show it was actually 3 years. Plus the reason why he was even in prison had more weight and substance, and was a theme that ran through the entire episode, with how his character changed to be in the present day, as his superiors said this was some kind of a test and to reform him, and the fact that he even reformed the prison and the inmates there was all new scenes in the show. In the comics, the superior just came and just said, he has another job somewhere that is taking up his time. Of course, the show did say something like that, but that was just the main reason in the show. It was not anything bad. It wasn't a test or nothing. He just told you to replace
Tell
him.
everyone
That
how you
was it.
really run this place.
You think people here don't know what we do?
Now, the confrontation and eventual fight between Invincible and Cecil is almost like the comics. The dialogues are a little bit different. Certain things worded differently, like the Enstrom Levy situation.
Is that all you got?
Why did you have to ask that, kid? You happy?
One thing that they did improve upon was in the show, they actually took what they learned, in that fight was in episode 3 or something in season 2, where he fought that sea creature, which had that sound wave that, hurt Mark's equilibrium. Am I saying it correctly? But anyways, they used that to build that weapon that they embedded in Mark to actually hurt him. In the comics, they never explain exactly how they figured that out. Now, some of the Guardians siding with Mark is almost like the comics, the fight with the anime. But one difference is that in the comics, Cecil was actually scared. He was actually, how should I put it, remorseful on what he had done when he saw the anime beating on Mark like almost to death, which they cut from the scene.
We're done. And if you ever come near my family again, I will kill you.
After everything that happened with Nolan, he looked me in the eye and he promised.
I can fight him. I'd kick his ass.
Mark trying to make right with Eve and convey his feelings properly also happens in the comics, but there are a few details that were changed, like the outfit, location. But the big change that they made in the show was that Eve left after saying she had to think about it. But in the comics, after confessing there and then, they just had a kiss and that was it. Now, towards the ending of the show, Eve does accept Mark's feelings and they officially start dating, and of course they share that kiss. And I like that attention to detail on how it was the same place that Mark almost confessed to her last season towards the ending.
If you'll have me, I'd be honored to serve.
It will be good to have Darkwing on the Guardians again.
Jesus.
Oh, lastly, Mark and Cecil meeting is almost the same as in the comics, with a few tweaks in the dialogue here and there. But the show cut a part out where Nolan actually visits the Pentagon, plus a few changes in the closing dialogue for Cecil. Oh, and I forgot, Eve didn't go back to college for any part-time, thing. That is all new in the show.
Shouldn't there be a cleanup crew for this?
They're not here. We are. Grab a mop.
Thought we stopped him, but they just gave him a bigger lab. Maybe I shouldn't have brought it up.
No, it's better to know.
You heard him. Who's coming?
You know I am.
Me too.
Wait! I can't work for a man I don't trust.
What was that for? I'm sorry, Immortal.
Shapesmith? Samson?
After the gas explosion, it's embarrassing, but I was scared to go out for a while.
I'd be scared to stay in.
But anyways, these are all the comparisons and changes, differences, tweaks here and there, with episode 2 compared to the comics. Now let's get started with the last episode 3 for season 3. Now, the opening scenes of this episode was akin to The Last of Us, the episode with Bill and Frank, where they fleshed out these barely important characters who just appear just in 1 or 2 quick panels here and there, and actually give some depth to them, trying their best to live a normal, crime-free life until they had no choice but to be pulled back in it. The comics was not like that. It was just 1 quick panel of them talking about how hard their life is, and the other them just going back into crime, trying to rob a bank. And in the comics, there was no Black Samson there to stop them the first time. It was only Invincible who was there in the comics to stop them, which did happen in the show in the second part when they went back into crime.
You promised you wouldn't use your powers without me. You could have gotten hurt.
And I'm not using my powers without you. You're here.
We're leaving.
But I want to stay and watch.
I said we'd start training. I didn't say it was going to be easy.
When are you going to teach me how to fight? I've been practicing stuff I saw on the internet.
Flying first, fighting second. You better keep up. Don't want to be late.
Late for what? Wait up! Ready, because Kid Omni-Man is here!
Oh, jeez.
What's this?
A fresh start.
Whoa! You look amazing!
I don't know. Feels a little serious.
Also, those scenes with Amber and Eve didn't happen in the comics. Her going back to her parents and trying to talk to them and moving back in is almost like the comics, just that the comics version of her dad didn't stay around for the conversation. He just walked away. Plus, the show had more depth and dialogue and story overall to that particular scene. Now, Rex and, the former members of the Guardians of the Globe moving back to their old, base was just like the comics. It's just that the show has now added more scenes and more, how shall I say, connection between Rex and Shrinking Ray, which didn't happen in the comics. In the comics, even Shrinking Ray was a dude. He was a guy. So I feel like there was even a hint in episode 1, and I think there's going to be a relationship between them. And during this moment, Eve was there unpacking with them, helping them out. But in the show, they are done packing, or they are already packing, and she comes in from above with the dialogue a little bit tweaked here and there.
Oh, and you want to be closer to Mark, right?
I thought you weren't such a jerk anymore.
Baby steps, Eve.
That moment between Titan and Mr. Liu was almost the same, with certain moments like this that was cut from the episode.
Just make them happy and they'll leave us alone.
Or what?
Or they replace you with the next guy. You, me, and your family are all 6 feet under.
And them going over to fight Furnace, was it Furnace? And Kursk, was it Kursk? Anyways, I'm just bad with names, but it's almost the same as the comics. It's just that it being a show, they are going to change certain animations and sequences during the fight. But one change that they did was Mark calling Oliver's name instead of Omniboy.
Who do you? These are, we were at a comic book store opening.
Now, the scenes with the, Molar twins were a little bit extended in the show. We got to see them arrive there at the nuclear site, try to, launch this thing that is going to disrupt communication devices or whatever they said, with the Guardians of the Globe arriving to stop them and they not being successful. With the comics, it was just a short, panel with them,
No hope for that. See your face, fucking folks. You might be giant. Stand up. Why not leave them out there? Let the engine cook them during law.
Most of what happened is almost the same. It's just some little tweaks here and there, like the costume the Molar twins wore, the gun was different, but everything else, like the major points, like the missile being launched, Oliver actually killing them, with the Guardians there to bear witness, and Cecil coming in.
It was an accident. I didn't mean to kill them. I saved you guys.
They're just stunned, Oliver. But I know you were just trying to help.
I told you to stay away from my family.
Also, that big talk that Mark and Oliver has in the air, in the sky, a little bit different and stretched out in the show, where, Oliver tried to run away. But there's one big change that the show did when it comes to Mark's arc and character development, was this moment.
You sound just like Dad.
Why is that bad? You act like you know everything, but do you ever think that maybe Dad was right?
Also, the talk that Mark and Debbie has with Oliver doesn't happen in the comics. What did happen is Mark alone trying to talk to him but being unsuccessful and going off. And one major plot point that the show also changed was during that moment with Mark, Debbie, and Oliver. They were spied on by this ball, this camera-like ball, which they later on during the ending showed someone watching Mark's life, his time spent with his loved ones. Which, spoilers, click off now if you don't want to know, but it's obvious. Ernstrom Levy, you can tell by the voice. But in the comics, it was actually during that moment that Mark and Eve share on the roof is when that camera is shown. Plus, the comics actually just showed Extreme Levy watching, unlike the show trying to hide it a bit. Also, in the comics, the camera actually follows Mark for a long time before Mark actually discovers it. Unlike the show, which just straight up shows Mark discovering it and, you know, knowing what's up, that someone is watching him.
Don't want to lie to you like Nolan lied to me.
Okay.
Nolan wasn't a travel writer.
Sounds about right. This is a weird first date.
I've had worse.
Anyways, guys, these are the differences, the changes, the similarities between episode 3 of season 3 of Invincible versus the comics. When the next episodes drop, I will be covering those as well. So I do hope you leave a like, comment, share. It does help the video out, and also turn on the post notification bell not to miss those videos and more. As always, Neddy Sage here. I'll see you guys in the next one.